Welcome to More Details, Please, with your hosts Emmanuel and Angela Williams, where we dive deeper into conversations with visionary entrepreneurs to discover what it takes to turn passion into purpose. Listen to real-world stories from self-starters and trailblazers, and discover strategies and innovations shaping a greener future. Whether you are a seasoned business person or just starting out, let this be your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable tips for success. Join us now as we create a brighter, greener future together.
Welcome to More Details, Please, where we help entrepreneurs turn their passion into purpose. I'm Angela.
And Emmanuel Williams.
And today we're going to dig deeper into entrepreneurship, but specifically, we're going to focus on how to avoid burnout, which is something that is very common, not only for entrepreneurs, for everyone. So, Emmanuel, have you ever experienced burnout?
When I hear the word burnout, I refer to an electrical circuit. And we all know that in an electrical circuit, signs of a burnout is when the wires start getting really hot. And then if you don't do anything about it, over a period of time, you'll start to see the wires start turning colors. And then eventually the wire burns or it can catch on fire. But at the end of burnout, that wire is no longer any good. So when it comes to burnout, as an entrepreneur, it is very important to be able to recognize the signs.
So some of the signs are there's not enough hours in a day, you can't get it all done, you got to work faster, you sleep less, you need to do more. You are the everything in the business, and literally you are to the point where you can no longer think clearly.
Well, as you take an electrician, in order for him to realize the signs, he have to have tools. He have to have measuring tools. He have to have the ability and the foresight and the foresight and the insight to know. He have to use his senses, his smell, his touch, his taste. But the signs of a burnout is everything when it comes to the individual entrepreneur. You got to know yourself. You got to be aware enough to be able to feel what's going on with you. Because if you're so busy doing and you don't take the time to be quiet, to be able to take your tools and your meters and your gauges and to be able to assess yourself, then you'll be able to be more an effective person to be able to know when those burnout signs are coming. Because at some point, a burnout is beyond repair. At some point, if the wires are too burnt, or if the wires, sometimes you can repair them, sometimes. But burnout is a process of being able to gauge and measure how you are feeling physically, emotionally, psychologically, and mentally. Those are some very important things that you have to be able to gauge in terms of burnout. And we have tools practical tools that we help entrepreneurs utilize in order to be able to gauge those situations.
But let's be candid. It's easy when you allow your mission, your passion, turning it to purpose. It can take over your mind 24/7. That's all you live and breathe and everything you think of. You literally cannot get out of the bed without thinking about the business in one way or another. Can happen. So when we talk about practical steps, I mean, part of it is recognizing it, of course. But the biggest thing is you have to do something about it. For me personally, early on in the business, I felt that it was so much to get done, from finding the clients to marketing the business to networking, which takes a lot of time. It wasn't so much social media at that time, but think of every other thing that you would need to do to get out there and get the business going. And it just got to a point where it's overwhelming. So from the emails and the phones and the ringing and the dinging, and then hiring employees and dealing with the issues that the employees had, or dealing with a client that wasn't satisfied in some way or another, it was overwhelming. It felt like it was a never-ending situation. And for me, clearly realized I had to get help. I had to have other people to help me, and I had to train those individuals on the things that they could do to help me lighten the load so that I can move forward. So I'm always looking for, how is this helping me? And when I've gotten to a point of somebody else can do this, I do not have to do this anymore. That is how I've been able to overcome those points in which I feel totally burnt out.
That's a good position to be in when you have so much business that you're overwhelmed. That's a sign to say it's time to do something different. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship, because you're constantly overcoming and becoming. You're constantly stepping outside your comfort zone. You're constantly dealing with uncomfortable situations and trying to overcome those things, whether it's dealing with employees, whether it's dealing with your health. You are always overcoming. And that's the thing about life that I enjoy, and that for me, everything is purpose driven. It's not driven by just trying to make money, because you get lost in that. It is, what is it that motivates you to wake up in the morning when your back is against the wall and you don't see a way out, but you still keep pushing?
Yeah, so later in the show, we're going to be joined by a special guest, Mark Villella. He's a business and IT leader who's built a multi-million-dollar system, and he has mentored future CEOs, and he just got back from a well-deserved vacation. It was so exciting when we were scheduling the meeting. It was like, I'm going to come back from vacation, which is great, because sometimes you need a vacation, not because you're experiencing burnout, but because you don't want to experience burnout. So he's going to share some practical insights on how to scale without sacrificing your well-being, because your health is your wealth, and you don't want to sacrifice that. So let's just dive right into the topic, Emmanuel. So you're an entrepreneur, and your default mindset is workaholic. That would be me. So if you're driven and you're ambitious and you're hardworking, chances are that you have that I can do it all attitude. Or if you can't do it all, you want to believe that you can do it all. So you are at risk of burnout. And at the startup stages of the business, that's when you may feel it the most. Like I gave you in my example, it was marketing, it was customers, it was employees, it was all of those things that had to get done in the business. And if I wasn't going to do it, who else was going to do it? But you don't want to take your time to focus on those things in an unhealthy way. And what I mean by that is, if you're only focusing on what you can get done during that time, you will experience burnout. But it's going to take you to step away, for you to create some space, and for you to allow yourself to make the best decisions possible for your business. That's what I've found that works for me, and I'm sure it can work for other entrepreneurs as well.
Well, one of the things that you said, Angela, so eloquently was time. We have to be very aware of time, because time can be like a tidal wave where it can totally take you over and wash you away, and you're totally lost in whatever it is that you're doing. And the time that I'm really speaking towards is not practical time, clock time, where you use time for practical purposes, doing the things that you need to do in order to make your business grow, or for you to be a productive company. I'm talking about the psychological time, where you are constantly worrying about the pain of the past and the fear of the future. And if you're trapped in that, then you are now a slave of your mind. And your mind don't have an on and off button. If you don't understand it, your mind is going to take you places where you feel uncomfortable. And so when you talk about burnout, a lot of the burnout is dealing with psychological time, where we are constantly running from something that is an illusion, which time is an illusion, or running to something that we feel like is going to give us fulfillment or make us feel better. And so as an entrepreneur, and this is what I really enjoy about talking to people about entrepreneurship, because it's a metaphor for life. Because you could take these practical applications and examples and apply them to your life to make you a better dad, to make you a better neighbor, to make you a better person. So when you talk about burnout, burnout really is when your body starts to get so fatigued that it starts to shut down. And if you don't know how to control that, you are at the mercy of bad health situations, and you are at the mercy of not living a long, productive life.
Yeah, so what it looks like, you feel exhausted all the time. You wake up tired. You need coffee all the time. You can't focus on simple tasks. Now, I gotta tell you, I said I wasn't gonna talk about the heat, but I will. I didn't know for the last couple days if I was having my own personal summer or if the natural summer and my personal summer had mixed together, but nonetheless, I felt like I could not move. Now, that was not necessarily burnout, but that's how burnout feels. You are exhausted. You cannot turn it off, dinging and bringing all the time. Because you can't switch it off, you're probably experiencing burnout. But don't worry, because our guest is going to share some of the things that has helped him avoid burnout and may help you as well.
Well, this is how I avoid burnout, is that all you can do is all you can do. And one of the things that I use, and we talked about this on the last one of our podcasts, was meditation. Our ability to slow everything down, to be quiet, and to meditate. And for me, meditation is not just sitting in a room for 15, 20 minutes being quiet, which is great, but I am in a constant mode now of meditation. Give you an example. When I wake up in the morning, when we talk about meditation, for us, meditation is becoming more familiar with, right? That's what meditation is, becoming more familiar with. Now, in saying that, this is how the mind works. The mind says, become more familiar with what? It's always trying to attach itself to something. That can be draining. I'm attaching myself to this situation. I'm attaching myself to this thought. I'm attaching myself to this emotion. And we have between 12 and 20,000 thoughts that flow through us each day, and we don't even realize it. So to not be in control of that, or not even to be aware of that, we can start to see where the energy is draining from our body. It's sort of like having a house and your windows are open and all the heat is going out until you figure out the windows open, then you close the window. So in the meditation mode, for me, is becoming more aware with, and this is important because when I wake up in the morning, the thoughts that I'm thinking, becoming more aware of the emotions that I'm feeling in my body and the reaction to those thoughts and those emotions. Becoming more aware of those things help me to slow things down and to bring a dimension of me more into being able to see where this draining is coming from. And the more I become more familiar with those stories that I'm telling myself, the more I'm able to feel more comfortable in dealing with that. And then there it is. The light of awareness says, you have a choice. You don't have to choose that thought. You don't have to choose that emotion. You don't have to listen to this particular story. So as I become more familiar with, in my meditation mode, of those reactions, those thoughts, those emotions, I'm to the point where now I have a choice. And during the course of the day, I'm always bringing that awareness to those stories and being able to make choices that's going to benefit me. So that is sort of a part of how I'm starting to live my life and becoming more aware of all of those old stories, those angry stories, the things that people have done in the past from childhood, those angry situations, those jealous situations. All of those things are really, whether we realize it or not, pulling the energy from us, and we don't even realize it. But until you go into your meditation mode to become more aware, then that's when you enter the subconscious mind and you start to function from a quantum perspective.
Yeah, meditation is important, and I think we'll do another whole topic on that. But right now, I'm excited to bring someone who knows what it means to build a system that supports sustainable growth. So Mark, welcome to More Details, Please. You've spent over 2 decades in business and IT world guiding future CEOs, building multi-million-dollar SaaS platforms. Now, we want to hear a little bit more about Mark and your experience. So Mark, with experience building high-performing systems and teams, what early warning signs of burnout have you learned to watch for? either for yourself or for your team?
Well, sure. Well, first, real quick, Angela, thanks for having me, and Emmanuel, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. And I've been listening backstage at some of your conversation, and it is very applicable. I share some of the same things. And burnout is a real thing, as you've clearly mentioned, and there are signs that everybody sort of has to look for, and I think it can be unique to some people based on who they are or how they operate. For me, when you talk about early warning signs, some of the things you mentioned around exhaustion are certainly applicable. I think stress and tense, you get really kind of worked up and agitated a little bit, or you can certainly. I know for me, as I've gotten a little older, the body sort of starts to feel the stress and tension a little more than it used to when I was younger. So those are kind of things to kind of recognize, I think, a little bit. Also, when you mentioned like for employees, I think they can get worked up. They get some of the same things, but really they just kind of get stressed, and you can kind of see it on their faces or whoever it is. And so you have to recognize that as a leader and try to figure out sort of what's going to work for them to help alleviate that stress. Is it time off? Is it reducing their workload? Is it just sitting down and talking through what specific things are causing them the most anxiety as they try to work on their own workload and they're feeling run down and things like that. So all of those are applicable, I think, when you're trying to recognize, hey, am I doing too much? Is that burnout sort of aspect really real? And I need to sort of catch it, as Emmanuel alluded to, hopefully before it gets to the end and I truly am burnt out.
Yeah. It's interesting because you are in a particular area that I would say it's one that's required, but nobody really likes. So compliance and risk. You have to deal with compliance and you have to deal with risk. So when individuals are in that burnout space, but this is something that they have to deal with, how do you level set that conversation? I mean, obviously they probably come to you when they know it's important to have. I would imagine that sometimes they would rather do something else.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, the space we're in, as you mentioned, is compliance and risk, and people are using our software platform to help minimize that risk and hopefully avoid the situation of being, in front of an auditor or something like that, where they're getting asked about compliance or are they getting it done, that's going to cause them additional stress and workload to advance the burnout. The whole point of our software is if you're using it all along, you're ultimately going to reduce that because we're taking a lot of that burden off of you already with the platform itself. So that certainly is an aspect that can assist with burnout. When people are coming to us, then we just help calm them down because we've dealt with these sort of compliance and risks over and over again. And I think, again, that when you talk about the mental side, the unknown or what could happen or what has happened in the past all sort of plays into that. So if we can provide some comfort, some structure, some process around how to deal with these things and work through them, ideally with the best outcome possible on the other side, that's certainly going to help them get back to their normal. So I've been in the IT software space quite a while. I was able to be part of a company that was sold in 2018 and had some equity in that company that allowed me to sort of take a step into entrepreneurship. I've always wanted to do that. As we were talking, Ange, a little bit, I'm an executor as well. I've always been that. I've dealt with burnout at several levels as an employee, as a leader, and now as an entrepreneur, at least the overwhelming feeling that can drive. But at any rate, I had ventured out to do my own thing and was quickly approached by some previous customers and relationships that I had and was able to build a platform to meet these compliance needs. That I started in 2019, 2020 and launched our first customer in 2021. And we've since been able to grow that business. I think we did about 10 to 15,000 in my first year, if you can believe it. Now we're, as you alluded to, a $10 million company in 4 short years. And a lot of that too comes with the potential burnout of how do you grow that, what do you need, all of those different areas that you mentioned that you have to have to think about sales, marketing, in my case, product development on top of IT support. And there is a lot there. And there's a lot of tools, whether they're, software tools out on the market today that we didn't even have, 5 or 10 years ago that can certainly help with a lot of that, both to allow you to grow with less resources, but also to help you hopefully get things done with less time.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mark. I thought that's important for our listeners to hear, that 4 short years can change a lot in your life, in your business.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mark, what type of software do you produce?
So we build what's called Form I-9 and E-Verify software. It's actually related to employee onboarding, and it's a federal government requirement for all employees that they complete this form. And it sounds kind of silly that we've grown a multi-million-dollar company on it, but as you may have heard, there's a lot going on even today with immigration and ensuring people are authorized to work in the United States. And this Form I-9 is sort of the document or form that's filled out by employers that sort of walks them through the process of making sure who they're hiring is in fact authorized to work. So we automate that. There's a lot of change, regulation that's constantly changing that all employers really need to be aware of. But in using software like ours, we can take a lot of that off their plate, recognizing the software is going to make sure that they're doing the right things as they complete the process.
Well, thank you for that. Tell me a time when you experienced burnout, and what did you do to get beyond that?
Well, that's a great question. There's probably a few times. Being in the IT software space, there's 2 things. One is we have a lot of software deadlines that we would be marching towards, and as obviously deadlines get closer, you tend to work more hours if you're in jeopardy. Or else the other piece of it is support. If a system goes down or a specific customer has an issue, there's not always the ability to wait until the next day to address it. So, for me, for burnout, I don't recommend it, but essentially the biggest thing I can think of is I was working for a company that whose CEO sort of had a different viewpoint than I did. And we were marching 60, 70-hour weeks for months, literally months at a time. And it was not just myself, it was our entire team. And we were, again, trying to meet a deadline, which our team worked really hard to meet. It was exhausting. I was hearing some feedback at home about, when are you going to be available? Right? When are you going to not be working? And, my team was similar kinds of things. And we sort of, pushed on to get to the deadline and then, tried to treat the folks for a job well done after being exhausted even, and didn't necessarily get the response from management that we had hoped for. And they were signing us up to do another march. And like I said, I don't recommend this, but I recognized that wasn't going to work for me. As much as I worked and tried to meet deadlines, I wasn't going to sign up my whole team to do it again. And so I actually quit, which again, I don't necessarily, not everybody can do. I don't even know if I could do it at the time, quite frankly, but it was one of those things where it was just kind of like, nope, this isn't going to do it. I got to find something else in order to make this work. And so I did. And eventually, it was difficult. I ended up going from doing IT work to mowing lawns for a little while, if you can believe it, because I had to do something, and it kind of gave me time to reset. I had to find a new gig, but it was worthwhile. I wasn't going to sacrifice anything more than I already had, and it was impacting family and potentially employees' families as well. So not maybe the best thing you're looking for, but I recognized it, I think, to your whole point, right?
No, that is real. Out? I mean, yeah. That's real. What was the lesson you learned from that? What did you take from that experience that you apply it now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing now is I really try to manage deadlines. Are they realistic deadlines, meaning are they self-directed, or is there really a deadline you have to meet? There's still are some deadlines you have to meet, certainly in the compliance space, but oftentimes they're self-managed deadlines or self-imposed deadlines that you're trying to hit just to get things done. And those are the ones that I tend to let slide if I think they need to, right? We're trying to do our best. Other stuff's come up for whatever reasons, whether they were unplanned or we just forgot about them, whatever the case is. And I'm like, look, we're not going to sit here and do a death march to get this done by this date. We're going to let it go another week or two and just move it out, making sure that, I believe everybody's kind of doing their stuff, but it doesn't have to be working that hard for that long to get something done. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken away from that particular lesson.
Because what I really admire about what you just told us about how you handle stress and dealing in a high impact environment, and I think this is something that I think all of our listeners need to take heed to, is that at some point you have to be willing to walk away. You know, the most important thing that we have to be responsible for is our state of consciousness, how we feel, what we think, what we feel, what we believe, because that is in direct proportion to what we're going to attract in our lives. And so one of the things that has happened with you in that I'm seeing is that the best decision that you could have made was to step outside into the unknown and drop it. And as a result of regrouping, regardless to what it is that you needed to do in order to continue to pay your bills and to continue to generate money, you was willing to make that sacrifice. Most people are not willing to make that sacrifice. Most people are willing to stay in a situation where they are uncomfortable, but because they're comfortable in it, they were willing to stay. It was this guy who was on his ship, and he got captured, and they had him in the basement of the ship, tied up. And the captain came down there, and the captain said, in the morning, when we come back down here, you're going to be executed. And the only way you're going to be able to get out of this situation is this one door. And if you go through that door, then that's the only way of getting out off this ship without being executed. So he left, he came back the next morning, and the guy was still there in the ship. And then he got executed. And one of the captain's men said, "Captain, what is on the other side of that door?" And the captain said, "Freedom." He said, "But most people are willing to settle for a known hell than an unknown liberation." And so in your situation, you had the ability and the awareness to feel the stress and to step outside your comfort zone. And I think that is the beginning of helping you get to where you are at this point.
I absolutely agree. And you're right. There's not a lot of people that can do that. And as I said, it certainly wasn't an easy decision, and certainly set us back, financially for a short term, but health-wise, mentally, everything else, it certainly was the right thing to do in that particular instance.
Well, we commend you for that, Mark. We also commend you for taking a vacation. So I'm sure you feel relaxed and wonderful now that you are back from your vacation. So that's great. So now that you are so relaxed, what advice would you give to ambitious entrepreneurs who are scaling quickly or growing quickly, but they're risking burnout?
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that too, because the vacation was nice. I've been doing this for 4 years. Well, 4 years since I've had customers. A little more than that, but this last week was the first time that I really didn't have a business incident come up while I was on vacation, which was fantastic. It lends itself to maturity of the system, but also, I think you alluded to a little bit, Angela, the ability to offload some of the other things that I do to other employees, and then allowing them to kind of take over and manage that stuff. And so it was really fantastic from that perspective. I really was able to enjoy that time. And it absolutely is necessary to sort of re-energize. We talk about, signs of burnout. And I think there's like two kinds of signs a little bit that you mentioned. There's kind of like sometimes the daily burnout or daily grind that kind of wears on you. And then built up over time, you get to these like kind of, bigger events or maybe feeling it more. And so I think, you need to watch for those things as well and rest and relax. And I do have to share, because I was thinking about as you were talking, and it comes a little bit from growing up. But, one of the biggest things I do now to sort of manage my daily burnout is play video games. And my family kids me about it, because sometimes I get worked up playing the video game. They're like, "Well, how is that relaxing?" And I'm like, "Well, it's the mental side that's relaxing. I'm not thinking about work or any of the things I got to do. I'm thinking about the game and the opponent I'm playing and kind of doing that." And it gives me kind of that just shift. Maybe it's not relaxing, but it gives me that shift, which is what I found I've needed to kind of be able to not be thinking about work all the time. And that can be as little as an hour, to do that, to really to grow. The other thing I wanted to mention, just because of the topic, is I think you've got to recognize what works for you and when you're at your best, right? Time management, you talked about it, Angela, I know. And for me, I learned that over years, where if I've got to deal with a more a software engineering problem than maybe just a get it done problem. But I don't work as well in the evenings as I used to. I'm very much an early morning person. Yep. And so I'm up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I know that, and I've read this too, but I know those first 2 hours, right, are meant to be when you're at your mental best, or where you could solve problems the best. And so I've changed my sort of how I work on things to be, if I need to get something done that doesn't require the same mental capacity as solving a software or a technical problem, then I'll do those in the evening. But if it's a software problem or something like that, then I'm going to bed or not working on it and getting up early. And it's amazing to me how much faster, how much more the mind works, and to be able to solve those problems than spending hours in the late evenings, early morning, burning out and not getting done.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Well, Mark, that's interesting, because I want our listening audience to know that meditation doesn't necessarily mean being in a quiet space. Because for me, I like ballroom dancing. I'm not thinking, I'm enjoying the music. It's just a way of escaping. Yeah. So there's a lot of little things that we can do to help burnout, that I wanted to give people the creative abilities to figure out what it is that is going to work for them.
Absolutely.
You got to use what works for you. Mark, thank you for sharing that. And we're very similar. Not video games, but solitaire. And I am a fan of Columbo. So he's like, why are you watching it all the time? You've seen that episode 100 times. Like, you don't get it. This just helps me.
She constantly, that's all she watches, Columbo. I'm like, my goodness, I've seen this like 1,000 times. She still be watching it.
What can I say? It takes my mind off of everything else. And Columbo is just one of the smartest people I could ever imagine. So I love that character, so it's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about automation, and I'm going to just tip it a little bit to AI. How have you implemented automation or AI to make your business processes better? You're an IT guy, so I'm sure, just kind of remove it from the technology piece of you for a little bit, but are you using anything that automates stuff to make your life easier?
I think the biggest thing that I've done to automate things, and it's hard to take tech out, I'm not doing anything in particular with AI yet.
Okay.
We've got some ideas about how to incorporate it into our products and platforms. Compliance has a little bit of uniqueness where there's certain things you can and can't do. So trying to automate that may not work from a truly compliance perspective. But the biggest thing I automated early on was our billing process. And so tools today like QuickBooks or other software, right, they help us tremendously, especially if we're not finance experts, to kind of get the day-to-day accounting things done. And what I was able to do was figure out, how can I take how I bill my customers, pull information out of my platform, get it into QuickBooks to help me do invoicing predominantly very quickly. And I've been able to do that to where I only spend, on the billing side, not obviously collecting payments, but on the billing side of it, about an hour and a half a month, and I can do all of my billing through the course of this automation. So It is tremendous. It generates all my invoicing, and I just half of them I got to take a quick look at, but it works great, and it's set up in a way that allows me to scale as I grow the business as well. So that's been the single thing. We talk a little bit about do more with less, or how do you grow the businesses, and that's one of the ways I've been able to kind of grow without adding a ton of people and stay profitable, is by automation and trying to do that. So that's the biggest one I can think of that maybe not typical, because it's hard for some people to be able to put those pieces together in an automated way, whereas with my background, I was able to figure it out. So that certainly has been helpful on my journey.
Mark, that's big. I'm going to tell you a little secret, and shame on me as an entrepreneur. There used to be times where billing, that's where you make your money. Invoicing clients was something that I was like, oh, I got time for that. And then I'm billing clients like months and months later. They're like, what is this? It's crazy. That sounds crazy for an entrepreneur that lives on the fact that clients need to pay their bills, but you need to invoice them timely as well. So thank you for bringing that one up. And you allowed me to share one of my flaws that has since been fixed, but I'm just letting you know that we're not all perfect in business. We do some dumb stuff because that's how you pay your bills. But happened, now it's fixed. All right, so I know we're coming to a close, but I want to just talk a little bit about mindset shifts. What are some of the things that you have had to shift in your mindset as you look at scaling your business?
Mindset shifts, I think, is kind of goes back to a little bit of the burnout reduction in the sense of how do I offload those things that only I can do, or I believe as I've grown only I can do, right? If you're going to scale, you can't be involved in all of the details all of the time. I think we all kind of recognize that, but recognizing and getting there are certainly different things. So I had a little bit of that shift actually earlier this year as I was looking to some of my IT staff and things that I still kind of tended to manage or handle on my own, and started to get them exposed and comfortable and understanding what those things are, so that again they can take those over, and allows me then to shift on growing the business or finding other areas that I can shift or automate, or at least knowledge transfer to other individuals. And then again, really focusing more then on strategy, growth, new business areas, things like that, to really allow us to grow in other areas, but also allow the teams then to grow in those things that we transfer knowledge now. So as we get more of those types of opportunities, they can then add resources or scale out their teams to handle.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where people don't want to be told what they have to do. But if you want to grow the business, you have to figure out how to transfer knowledge and train other people up to help you out. You have to do that or you won't scale. So it's a choice. You can choose to scale or not to scale. So Emmanuel, one last question before we thank Mark and ask him, how can our listeners get in touch with him? Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment in terms of the mindset question. And this is personal. When Angela and I first started, we had a couple of employees. And one of the things that we was concerned about is to make sure that we can pay them and make sure that they have a decent pay and can take care of their family and things of that nature. And we only had a few. Now we have hundreds of employees. And one of the things that I asked myself, I said, what is the difference between back then and now when we talk about mindset? And it's really interesting because it's a different shift, different dynamic shift. And what it is, it's not something that I added to myself. It's not something that I brought in or figured out in terms of what I need to do in order to make that mindset shift. It is what I let go. It is what was blocking, and it was fear. It was the fear of, it's like, what's different now? I mean, like, we got hundreds of employees now, and we only had two we worked, but now I ain't worried about too much. I'm trying to find more employees. So what is the difference? And the difference was fear. I had removed the fear. I stepped outside my comfort zone, and I was willing to take the risk. So in that mindset shift, the universe lined up with everything, and things just started operating. You just start operating on another whole level of being able to attract what it is that you want. So it was not what I added, it was what I let go, and it was the fear. And then through my meditation, I had to go into becoming more familiar with, where did the fear come from? How did it get there? And how can I deal with it? Because fear is not necessarily a bad thing. It all depends upon how you deal with it, but you can only deal with it through meditation and realizing where that fear come from, how we got there, and it could be in our childhood. All kinds of stuff happens. And so that's the difference in mindset shift I wanted to share in terms of a shift in mindset in terms of future growth.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, and that's absolutely, I would agree with that, Emmanuel. It's kind of even just the knowledge transfer, starting to shift and let it go, and letting those folks handle it in order to grow. So I absolutely agree. I think I might be having a video problem here, so I'm not sure.
I know. So if you need to go ahead and turn off your video, that's okay, because we can still hear you. But Mark,
okay.
Oh, it stopped. Mark, please share with us, How can our listeners get in touch with you? The great thing about it is your business is B2B. So is ours, by the way. So it's a great way for you to share. How will they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can get in touch with us from our website or phone. Our website is gryphonhr.com, GRYPHONHR.com. Or we do still maintain a phone number for the business. Not as many people do. That's area code 248-800-6949, or else even just info at gryphonhr.com would be the easiest way to kind of reach out. But our website, if you go out to there, also has contact forms and things like that. So all ways are possible and whatever you're most comfortable with. But I appreciate the opportunity to let people get in touch with us.
Fantastic. And Mark, we will be in touch with you. We are curious of how you decide to price your technology, but that's another topic for another day. So excited. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and being here with us today. We truly appreciate it, and we are so grateful. I know that you have to run. I am just going to make sure we can unpack everything that we learned in this episode, and we know that it's real, that physical and emotional things that we call burnout can definitely take over and take its toll, but we want to make sure that we give practical tools and techniques to be able to handle it. So thank you for joining us this time on More Details Please, where we help entrepreneurs turn their passion into purpose.
Thank you for listening to More Details Please, presented by Emmanuel and Angela Williams from DetailXPerts, the mobile steam cleaning company dedicated to protecting the planet. Be sure to subscribe to More Details Please on your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow us on Facebook at DetailXperts and visit DetailXperts.net. That's DetailXperts.net. We hope you've gained some valuable insights from our conversations today. Stay driven by curiosity, and we'll bring you more details next time.